98. The Killing Time. Author's notes: the tune Anko sings is the Slaughter song from Trigun. I saw the anime scene on YouTube and immediately pictured Anko singing it. XXXXXXXXXXX. As the dogs barked, a huge smile split Anko's face and she began to sing a happy little tune. Total slaughter, I won't leave a single man alive. Shinzo stared at her. You know, Anko, I really love you, but sometimes you scare the hell out of me. She laughed. You wouldn't want me any other way. She leaned over and gave him a quick kiss. For luck, she sliced open her thumb. As the enemy came into sight, she sang the last line. Let's begin the killing time. She launched herself into the air and performed the summoning. A 20-foot high gold and black snake appeared underneath her. She lovingly patted the top of the snake's head. Eat up. XXXXXXXXXXX. As the dogs began to bark, Ino reached over and kissed Choji. For luck. She thought it very sweet the way he still blushed a little at a kiss, especially considering what they'd been doing a little while ago. XXXXXXXXXX. Tamari kissed her man with a possessive smile. Remember, you belong to me. If anyone kills you, I'll be very upset. I'd hate to have to waste time breaking in someone else. Troublesome, Shikamaru said, but he was smiling. XXXXXXXXXX. Kurenai was with her team. Asuma suddenly realized that he'd forgotten to get a good luck kiss. Well, too late for that now. He took out his trench knives and focused his chakra through them. XXXXXXXXXX. Kiba gave her a deep and really passionate kiss. For luck. He then happily ran off to fight beside his clan. Watching him go, to Yuya smiled. He would never be Haku, but she realized that it didn't matter. She was starting to fall in love with him. But if he ever cheats me, I really will cut his balls off. She took her flute out and began to play a wicked tune. XXXXXXXXXX. Haku kissed her gently and tenderly, as he always did. For luck, Gabriella. For luck, she agreed. She pulled out the katana that Sensei had given her when she made Chunin. She could see the enemy coming. Most of them wore masks, all those that did not wore the Sharingan. Oh Kami, please help me. XXXXXXXXXX. Tenten stood on the roof. She had gotten her good luck kiss from Neji before coming up here. He and Shizune would stay at Naruto's side, both watching over him and providing a last line of defense. She and Neji, along with all of the cadet branch members, were deeply in Naruto's debt. That gave her extra motivation to fight. She took out one of a dozen scrolls and released it. She had a huge pile of blades in front of her. With an angry smile, she began to rain down death. XXXXXXXXXX. As the dogs began to bark, Kakashi popped a soldier pill into his mouth. He wasn't the only one. He and many others wanted every bit of energy he could get. He lifted up his Hyodite and exposed the Sharingan. He had been a legend in the Anbu Black Ops, the finest assassin of his generation. He held out his palm and began to concentrate his chakra. The sound of birds chirping could be heard. Forgive me, Obito, for what I am about to do, but I fear your clan has dishonored your memory. As soon as he spotted them coming, he got moving. He picked out his target and ran straight for him at top speed. The root ninja in the bull mask saw him coming and Kakashi could see his movements suddenly get sloppy. He's hesitating because he's scared. I'll bet he's heard stories about me. Danzo would be disappointed. The ninja in the bull mask threw some kunai and tried to dodge away, obviously not wanting to engage. But that wasn't his choice to make. Kakashi could read his movements with ease thanks to the Sharingan and closed in on him. At the last second, the man tried to cast some sort of jutsu, but it was too late. With an effortless grace, Kakashi slammed his Reikiri into the man's chest and into his heart, obliterating it. Kakashi yanked his hand back out again and refocused his chakra to maintain the lightning blade. He barely noticed as the body in front of him collapsed to the ground. He was already looking for his next target. That's one. He spotted another root ninja and got moving towards number 2. XXXXXXXXXX. Hyuga Hiyashi was in the very middle of the battle. For the leader of the Hyuga clan, there was no other possible place for him. With ferocious power, he delivered a palm strike into his opponent's heart. The move was not as graceful or as awe-inspiring as some of his clan's special techniques. But it was brutally effective. A single clean palm strike to the head or heart was enough to kill. His enemy choked up blood before falling to the ground. At his feet were 2 Uchihas. Hiyashi was taking a grim satisfaction in defeating the members of his clan's hated rival. He was about to turn on another Uchiha when a ninja burst out of the ground beneath him. Before Hiyashi could react, a long barbed knife had been jammed clean through his right thigh. Even as he cried out in pain, he slammed down his top of the Anbu's head and sent a lethal dose of chakra into his skull. But now that his leg was impaled, he could barely move. Seeing this, his enemies showered him with kunai and shuriken. Unable to perform rotation and unable to leap away, Hiyashi did what he could to block them. But there were too many and his body was stabbed again and again. Hyuga Hiyashi slumped and then fell to the ground, dead. XXXXXXXXXX. From his position back in the tree line, Ryuki saw his hated rival fall. He nodded. It was a good start. XXXXXXXXXX. Jiraiya shunshined away from the mansion and well out past the onrushing enemy. When he materialized behind them, he was immediately spotted. 10 enemy ninja turned around to come after him. He bit down on his thumb and laughed as they surrounded him. Any of you ever see an ant get stepped on? He ran through some hand signs. Summoning technique. With a huge puff of smoke, Jiraiya was riding on top of Gamabunta's head. The other ninja were nowhere to be seen. Good work, Bunta. Gamabunta flipped his eyes up. Jiraiya, what's going on here? The boss frog summons looked at the battle that was raging all around them. This is Minato's old home. That's right, Bunta, this is the Namikaze mansion. And those ninja who are attacking it are leaf nins who have betrayed Naruto and are trying to kill him. What? Gamabunta's outraged shout actually brought the fighting to a momentary halt and woke up most of the village. Due to Danzo's communication blackout, the phone lines were all dead and the civilians could not find out what was happening. Jiraiya, are you telling me these men have broken their oaths to their Hokage and are trying to murder him? That's exactly what they're doing, Bunta. Jiraiya almost felt sorry for the poor bastards, almost. Gamabunta pulled out his sword. There is no worse scum than a traitor. The sword came down like a scythe coming down on wheat. 4 ninja were chopped more or less in half. Gamabunta began searching for more ninja to harvest. He hesitated only to avoid harming those who were defending the mansion and Naruto. XXXXXXXXXX. Gamabunta's sudden arrival forced the attackers to rush forward and close in. Ironically, it was safer to be close to your enemy. XXXXXXXXXX. An Anbu cried out and stopped moving as he was caught in the illusion of being bound in a tree. Kurenai slipped forward out of the non-existent tree with a kunai in hand. She was stopped short when the Anbu suddenly moved and brought his own kunai up into her chest. As she clutched her wound and fell forward, she took a good look at the Anbu with a hawk mask. His eyes were red with 2 small marks in each. Organizing the attack, Ryuki and Danzo had agreed to have a few Uchiha dress up as Anbu. While a few Anbu went without masks and had a minor genjutsu give them false Sharingans. Both leaders understood the value of deception. This would give them the chance to surprise some of their enemies. Seeing his opponent down the Uchiha, Anbu was about to move when he found himself swarmed under by bugs. Having seen his sensei go down, Aburame Shino spoke with rare emotion as he gave a command. Eat him to the bone. The Uchiha began to scream, but not for too long. XXXXXXXXXX. The Ino Shikacho teamwork had not been on display for a long time, but standing together now it was clear that their unity had not been lost. A group of 6 ninja came at them, one of them was an Uchiha. Shadow possession technique. Shikamaru's shadow leapt forward and caught 5 of them. They're all yours, Choji. Right. Body expansion technique. Choji grew 20 feet tall and pulled out a metal club. He then began playing one of his favorite games, Whack-the-Mole. The Uchiha had spotted the shadow and leapt away at the last moment. Seeing what looked like an easy target, he bolted for a blonde girl in a purple outfit. Ino desperately tried to lock onto him with one of her mental jutsus, but he was moving too fast. Grand Windstorm. The Uchiha was caught in mid-air and sent flying. Ino turned around to see the other girl with her fan still out. Ino slowly nodded in her direction. Thanks. Tamari looked at her and gave a simple nod. You're welcome. Ino turned back towards the fight and tried to pick out a likely victim for one of her jutsus. Want to go shopping later? Sure. XXXXXXXXXX. Seishu ran forward with his katana out and ready. His enemy was an Uchiha probably no older than Naruto. The young pup was smirking at him. Seishu had seen that before. No doubt the boy was thinking that no old broken down ninja could be much of a threat. What could an old man do to one of the Uchiha elite? Seishu smiled. As they closed in on each other, Seishu got in the first strike. He sent a wide arcing slice at the boy's midsection. But the Uchiha could read the movement and was quicker. The boy ducked in close underneath the failed strike, eager to end it and move on to another enemy. Seishu never saw it coming. The first he knew of his enemy's attack was when he felt the kunai punch into the side of his neck. The boy was fast but just a little too sure of his own abilities. As blood filled his mouth, he could see the smirk still on the boy's face. The look changed to sudden surprise when he felt an iron grip on his wrist. The Uchiha tried to yank his hand free but couldn't. Seishu could feel the strength leaving his body, but the old ninja had enough left for one final attack. With the boy in close and held in place, he brought his katana back around. The boy could see the movement and brought his other hand up in a desperate effort to block. The katana sliced right through his fingers without even slowing. The blade went clean into the neck and only stopped when it hit the spine. Blood spurted out from Uchiha's throat. The look on his face was one of horror and of shock. As he collapsed to the ground, his last thought had probably been wonder at how such an old man could have killed him. As the world around him disappeared and turned black, Seishu was happy. He had known from the start that he was unlikely to survive this battle. But that was all right, he did not fear death. This is a good death, I die protecting my family, and I die knowing the Uzumaki will live on. No ninja, no Uzumaki could ask for a better end. XXXXXXXXXX. Uncle, Kushina screamed. Kushina, her brother was fighting at her side. Don't lose focus. We both knew that this is how it would probably end. He died defending his family, that's what he would have wanted. I know, she admitted and focused on a rather nervous Anbu with a crow's mask. But it still makes me angry. She launched herself at him. Back in Whirlpool Country there had been many old sayings. Just as there were many old traditions. The best known of them was this, never piss off the Uzumaki. The Anbu threw kunai at her. She spun her katana and deflected them with contemptuous ease. When she was on top of him he tried to fight using kunai. She could have killed him instantly but she really was very angry. So instead she sliced off both hands at the wrist and then cut open his belly with a huge X, sending his guts literally spilling out. The man fell to his knees and began screaming mindlessly. Shinzo came over and gave the man the mercy of a killing blow. You're getting sloppy. Oh shut up. Kushina viciously skewered an Anbu in a ram's mask. XXXXXXXXXX. The Uchiha pulled a short sword out of his enemy's body. Hearing the sound of birds chirping he turned around to see a ninja with silver hair with lightning in his hand. Uchiha Muldrose smiled. Well, if it isn't Kakashi of the Sharingan I was hoping I'd get the chance to fight you. Kakashi stood there calmly eyeing him. Tell me something Uchiha, your clan was one of the most honored and respected. Why are you doing this? Muldrose smiled. Because we are the elite of the elite. Uchiha blood is the finest in the world and it is only right that we lead this village. All we are doing is taking what should be ours already. Through murder. Don't get high and mighty Mr. Black Ops legend. You've probably murdered more people than anyone in this village. Kakashi nodded. I've killed and I've assassinated, but I would never betray. Tell me, did any of the Uchiha oppose this? Did even one of you speak against it? Muldrose looked at him in surprise. Why would we? For us the clan has always come first. Anything that strengthens the clan we support. Even if it means treason and bringing civil war to the village. Muldrose shook his head. The village only matters so far as it supports the clan. If destroying the village strengthened the clan then we would support that. Kakashi paused for a bit and then nodded. Thank you, that will make exterminating the Uchiha clan much easier. Kakashi ran forward. Muldrose ran forward as well with his sword ready. Ha, as if you and your Sharingan could beat a real Urk. Kakashi felt nothing as he pulled his hand out of his enemy's body. That's 12. XXXXXXXXXX. Water Dragon Missile. From out of the pond behind the mansion a massive stream of water rose into the air in the form of a dragon. It struck the ground right in front of Haku. The three ninjas he had been facing had leapt away and dodged the attack easily. When they landed again they were ankle deep in water as the area was temporarily flooded. Haku immediately used his Kekkei Genkai transform the water to ice. The enemy ninja were now trapped and immobilized. Since becoming a leaf nin Haku had tried to avoid killing whenever possible. But he had still been forced to do his share of it on missions. He did not hesitate now. Around them he took the moisture in the air to make sold spears of ice and quickly skewered them. He had no sooner done that than he was under attack again. Grand Fireball Technique. Seeing a massive ball of fire heading towards him he quickly worked a jutsu. Wall of Ice Technique. A solid wall of ice formed in front of him. The ball of fire struck with violent force exploding on impact. The wall shattered and a huge gout of steam filled the nearby air. Being too close was thrown back by the force of the explosion. Seeing an opportunity the Uchiha ran forward. Energy blazed around her hand as she formed a chakra scalpel. She came to a sudden halt when another kunoichi seemed to appear before her. Gabriella, the woman called in surprise. Gabriella held her katana out and nodded acknowledgement. Hello Ichala. The two women faced each other. They were only a few years apart with Ichala being older. They were cousins and had been close as children, though they had drifted apart once Ichala began her ninja career. But they had always liked one another. Gabriella, what are you doing? How can you go against your own clan? I could never go against my own clan. Gabriella said calmly. But my clan is Momochi now, not Uchiha. Ichala looked at her cousin disbelieving. How can you betray your family? You talk to make about betrayal. You who have broken your oaths to serve Konoha and the Hokage. I am loyal to my clan. Ichala shouted right back. Well, so am I, and what's more, being loyal to my clan doesn't mean I have to be disloyal to my village. The clans are a part of the village, we serve the village. Ichala shook her head. You are an Uchiha by blood, Gabriella, no matter who you are married to. We're Uchiha, we're the strongest, and we are the best. I know your father will forgive you if you come over to our side. Gabriella shook her head. I would never betray the Hokage and I'd rather die 100 times than betray Haku. He never disowned me or made me feel worthless because I didn't have the Sharingan. She saw Ichala open her mouth. Enough. I didn't come here to debate, we both know what side we're on. Out of love for you Uchiha, I'll give you one chance. Just turn around and go. But if you take a single step forward, cousin or not, I'll kill you. She shook her head. I can't run away. And I can't let you go past. Gabriella said sadly and got ready. Then there's no choice. Uchiha tensed. I guess not, Gabriella answered. Uchiha rushed forward and Gabriella did the same. They were both power kunoichi. They both had the Sharingan. They were both ready to fight and die for their cause. But one was a medic nin and one was a close combat specialist. Uchiha looked down in horror at the katana that had slammed up and into her ribs. The chakra scalpel faded out. With a moan Uchiha fell down onto the ice. Her warm blood began to pool around her. Gabriella looked down at what she had just done. I really killed her. She stared at her cousin's blood on her sword. Gabriella, are you all right? Haku shouted to her. The sound of his voice snapped her out of it. He still needed her, she would mourn later. I'm fine, she called back and hurried to his side. XXXXXXXXXXX. Ryuki looked on the scene with worry. The fighting was brutal and the death toll looked to be high on both sides. What was worse, the enemy seemed to be holding his forces at bay. He could not afford a Pyrrhic victory. It would be no success to kill Naruto at the cost of his entire clan. Naruto had to die and he had to die now before Ryuki lost any more of his people. He was sure that with Naruto killed most of the enemy would give up. It was time now to activate the backup plan. He turned to the 4 ninja he had deliberately held out of the battle for just this situation. They were the elite assassins of the Uchiha and of Root. Go. The 4 of them disappeared without a sound. XXXXXXXXXXX. They had brought Naruto down to the basement. It was considered the most secure location in the mansion. In a small storage room a bed had been set up with a heart monitor and an IV drip. Sitting on 2 chairs on either side of him were Neji and Shizune. They could hear the dim echoes of battle. Sometimes a really loud explosion would come through clearly. Otherwise it seemed to all be background noise. Neji activated his bloodline from time to time to see how things were going. He always noted that Tenten was alright. Because of chakra he did not keep it continuously active. Shizune looked at her watch nervously. It will be getting light out soon. Neji was about to agree when he heard a noise from the stairwell. Byakugan. He saw them just in time. Intruders. The door was kicked down and 2 figures rushed in. An Uchiha came at Neji and an Anbu in a tiger mask came at Shizune. Neji tossed away his cane and dropped into a Juken stance. His old injury would slow him down a bit but he would be alright for the short term. As the Uchiha lunged at him Neji landed a pair of strikes on his arm and shoulder shutting down some chakra points and backing up a step. Shizune had just enough time to pull back her robe sleeve and fire off 4 hidden needles that were strapped there. The Anbu managed to dodge or knock away 3 of them but the 4th jabbed into his arm. It slowed him down but he managed to keep going forward. He would be unconscious in a few minutes but he could still do what was needed. As both Shizune and Neji were momentarily occupied, 2 more ninja made a beeline for Naruto. There was nothing between the second Uchiha and an Anbu in a snake's mask. Naruto, Shizune screamed. She could do nothing but stand there helplessly and watch as the 2 ninja stabbed down with their kunai. Only to have their kunai stopped by a red chakra cloak. XXXXXXXXXX. Naruto felt a surge of power go through him and it was enough to bring him fully awake. As he opened his eyes he looked up to see 2 ninja standing over him with drawn kunai. One had an Anbu mask on the other was an Uchiha with the Sharingan and a look of fear on his face. Hello there, Naruto said cheerfully. In the very next second a pair of hands made of red chakra grabbed them both and crushed them like rotten fruit. Sitting up in his bed he saw Shizune and Neji facing 2 more ninja. Another pair of chakra arms shot out and crushed those 2 as well. Shizune and Neji were staring open-mouthed as the arms dropped the bodies on the basement floor and melted back into the red chakra surrounding Naruto. For his part Naruto sat up and stretched for a bit, not seeming upset at having just brutally killed 4 leaf nins. So, Aunt Shizune, Neji, tell me what I missed. And why am I in a hospital gown? XXXXXXXXXX. You know I blame you for this. Shinzo said. Oh shut up, an annoyed Kushina answered. You trying to say this is my fault? Well that's sort of what I meant when I said, I blame you for this. You know there's a reason your nickname used to be, shut up. Somehow Kushina actually found it comforting to be bickering with her older brother. They had always been this way, ever since they had both started using practice swords. Right now they were standing back to back with a dozen mutilated bodies at their feet. They were surrounded by 8 more enemy ninja but none of them seemed really eager to get close to those katanas. In all the fighting both Kushina and Shinzo had taken a few wounds and bled a little. But nothing serious, yet. So I've decided what to name my son with Anko. Shinzo said conversationally. Anko's actually letting you pick the name. Kushina said. Yeah, she says it's because of this thing I do for her with my tongue where. Hey, I'm your sister. I don't need to know the details. So what are you going to name him? Seishu. Kushina smiled at that. Well, uncle would have liked that. Yeah, and he suddenly stopped. All the fighting and all the movement stopped. Every ninja on both sides, every ninja in the village, and every person able to sense chakra suddenly halted or suddenly came awake. Because they all felt it, a monstrous and overpowering chakra. Just like one that had been felt 3 years ago near the Forest of Death. All eyes snapped up towards the roof of the Namikaze mansion. Naruto was standing there looking back at them calmly. He was dressed in the Hokage robes. Tenten and Neji were holding each other and Shizune was nearby looking on nervously. Naruto was surrounded by red chakra and 4 distinct tails swung about him. But unlike 3 years ago, he had not transformed. He was still just Naruto. And he was angry. XXXXXXXXXX. In Danzo's home, the 3 of them all felt it. After organizing his forces and sending them to battle, Danzo, Koharu, and Homura had come here to await the news. They had received no reports, and Danzo had begun to wonder. Now he knew. It's over, Danzo said as calmly as ever. We have lost. What? Koharu demanded. We can't know that. We haven't heard anything, maybe we will still win. Danzo merely shook his head. If Naruto has recovered enough to summon up that chakra, then there can be no hope of defeating him now. He began walking to his private study. What do we do? Koharu asked fearfully. Do whatever you like, but do it soon. As for me, I think I will take my leave. I refuse to be put in chains and judged like a common criminal. I will meet my end in my own way. He entered the study and shut the door behind him. Homura began walking towards the door, apparently about to leave. Where are you going? Koharu asked. I think it will be a beautiful day. I am going to watch the sun rise. And with that he left. Koharu let out a long sigh and decided to go home and await her fate. She decided that she would do a little reading. There was a wonderful story she'd been reading for a while and she wanted to see how it ended. XXXXXXXXXX. Naruto was looking out at the scene below him. His home had literally been turned into a battlefield. The beautiful estates, even the rose garden, had been burned up, blown up, and pretty much torn up. And there were bodies everywhere, and tragically he was certain that they were not only the bodies of his enemies. Even at this distance he was able to make out the body of his granduncle. All of you who have attacked my home and the people who were trying to protect me. You are all guilty of the crimes of treason and rebellion against both your Hokage and your village. For these crimes I sentence you to death, sentence to be carried out immediately. He disappeared with a flash of yellow. All around there was a loud and sickening series of pops and crunching sounds. Kushina saw 8 very nervous ninja suddenly reduced to 8 piles of body parts. In just a handful of seconds Naruto was killing every last remaining enemy. And these were not clean kills. He was tearing them apart. Heads were torn off and bodies were ripped into pieces. Seeing this butchery, Ino and a few others turned away to begin vomiting. In just a few seconds it was over. Well, almost. XXXXXXXXXX. Ryuki was horrified. Such power. His whole clan slaughtered. He was beginning to back away when he felt himself squeezed tight by a fist of red chakra. He was swung about and made to face Naruto. You have exactly 1 minute to live. They both disappeared in a flash of yellow. XXXXXXXXXX. They reappeared on the outer wall of the Uchiha compound. The sky was getting lighter, it was almost dawn. Why have you brought me here? Ryuki asked fearfully. Ignoring him, Naruto cast a jutsu. The entire top of the wall was filled with smoke. When the smoke cleared, there was a clone every few yards all the way around the wall. All the clones pulled out their swords. I made you a promise, Ryuki. Naruto answered quietly. Do you remember my promise? What did I say? What were my words? Ryuki looked frightened. There are no ninja left in the compound, only civilians and children too young to have the Sharingan. Naruto gave him a smile that chilled his heart. I promised you I would annihilate your entire clan, not just the ninja. You wouldn't. I beg you, Hokage-sama, show mercy. I did. Naruto screamed at him. The Uchiha clan has wanted me dead since the day of my birth. Your clan has given me more misery and pain than any other enemy. Yet despite everything that Sasuke, Itachi, and the rest of your clan did to me, I treated you with respect and honor. I put the past aside and acted with mercy. And you repaid me by stabbing me through the heart. His cruel smile widened a bit. You want mercy? All right, I'll only kill you and leave the rest alone. If you can name one time, just one, where your clan showed me some mercy. Ryuki stared at him. His mouth opened but he could think of no answer. That's what I thought. Your clan has hated me and wanted to destroy me for my entire life. It's only fair I return the favor. Your minute is up, Ryuki. I just wanted you to live long enough to know I would keep my promise and that you were responsible for the final massacre of your clan. The shadow clones leapt down into the compound and the screams began almost immediately. Ryuki screamed too. He howled and pleaded and wept. Naruto actually left him alive for another 20 minutes before finally ending his life. He didn't want Ryuki to see that he wasn't killing everyone. He had promised to annihilate the clan and he would. After today, the Uchiha clan would be extinct. The children he spared would be adopted into new families or grow up as orphans with new last names. But the Uchihas were gone forever. 99. A day of surprises. Asuma knelt beside Kurenai and held her hand as Hinata worked on her. You're sure she's going to be all right? He asked worriedly. Hinata nodded. She is very lucky the wound missed all her vital organs. She will make a full recovery. Hinata kept a tight focus on her chakra as she healed the tissue and brought Kurenai's flesh back together. I truly thank you, Hinata, Asuma said quietly. I know you have other things on your mind right now. She gave him a small smile. It's all right, the other things can wait. Helping the wounded can't. She had rushed back from the Hyuga estates the second she'd felt him unleash his power. It had taken her less than a minute, but by the time she'd arrived, the fighting was over and Naruto-kun was gone. Her immediate instinct had been to follow after. With his chakra blazing like a signal fire, she could have found him with her eyes closed. But then she'd heard the cries from the wounded. Her medical skills were needed here and she couldn't ignore that. Not long after her arrival, a Hyuga member had come up to her and told her about her father. She had seen him lying in the grass, proud even in death. He had never been the warmest of men, but she had always known he cared for her. She said a silent prayer and wept, but she could do nothing more for him. She had to save lives and help people who were suffering. Together with Neji and Shizune, she struggled to heal the torn and broken bodies that lay all around her. XXXXXXXXXX. Kushina knelt down and gently closed her uncle's eyes. His katana rested on his chest with both hands placed over the hilt. She gently kissed his forehead, his flesh was already growing cold. Goodbye, Uncle Seishu. Shinzo bowed his head in respect. Standing beside her husband Anko did the same, showing respect to a man who had fought to protect those he loved. XXXXXXXXXXX. The Inuzuka had gathered around in a circle. Within the circle were the bodies of 2 ninja and 2 dogs. These were both cousins to Kiba and their partners. Kiba, his mom, and his sister had all taken minor wounds in the fighting, they would all be fine. But 2 had made the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty. Alone among all the clans of Konoha, the Inuzuka openly displayed their hearts. For them, sorrow was not something to be ashamed of. It was only natural to grieve when someone you loved was gone. So Kiba and the others of his clan put their heads back and howled along with their dogs, honoring those they had lost and releasing their pain. Tayuya wasn't comfortable with this tradition. She wasn't the type to ever show she was hurting. But she went up to Kiba and put her arms around him. He looked over to her and nodded gratefully for her support and put his own arms around her. XXXXXXXXXX. About 50 of the defenders had died along with all of the attackers. After the fighting had come to its abrupt end, the first priority had been to help the wounded. Luckily, they had 3 top medical nins on hand, so no additional lives were lost due to late treatment. With the wounded taken care of, most ninja had taken a moment to grieve or pray or console another. When that was done, most took a much needed rest. No experience drained you like life and death combat. The next thing after everyone had rested would be tidying up the battlefield. They would need to line up all the bodies and prepare them to be identified and then buried. It was finally dawn, the long night was over. XXXXXXXXXX. As people were still resting, Jiraiya approached a weary Kakashi who was sitting down alone in the grass. You all right? Jiraiya asked. Kakashi gave a drained nod of the head. Sure, just tired. I don't doubt it. Kakashi turned his head and looked northward. That was the direction Naruto was in. Where do you think he is right now? The Uchiha compound, Jiraiya said firmly. It has to be. Both men nodded grimly. They knew what that meant. It's a real shame, Kakashi said sadly. But I don't suppose there was any other way this could have ended. The Uchiha brought this completely on themselves. Jiraiya said flatly. For that matter, so did Danzo and Root. Kakashi had been in the Black Ops for most of his ninja career. He still knew many in the Anbu. He shook his head sadly. That so many Anbu would betray their Hokage. Let's just hope Naruto doesn't decide to pay a visit on Anbu headquarters next. Jiraiya was only half joking. XXXXXXXXXX. 30 minutes after he had gone, Naruto returned. And he wasn't alone. When he reappeared, he was standing by the main door. As soon as he returned, he let go of the red chakra. As the power left him, he felt no exhaustion at all. He was quickly surrounded by all the ninja who had fought for him. Naruto. His mom immediately ran up to him and swallowed him up in a hug. She began covering his face with kisses between declarations of joy that her baby was all right. Normally, he didn't like it when his mom called him her baby in public, especially in front of so many witnesses. But just this once he smiled and accepted her words without complaint. Then he heard another woman call out his name. With a smile, Kushina stepped aside to allow Hinata to take her place. Hinata wrapped her arms around him and he put his protectively around her. After several welcoming kisses, she pressed her face against his neck and let out a long relieved sigh. She could feel one of his hands rubbing up and down her back. You're all right, aren't you, Hinata-chan? You weren't hurt at all, were you? She smiled. Of course he would be worried about her when he was the one who had nearly died. I'm alright, Naruto-kun. I wasn't even here. Kushina made me leave before the fighting started. Naruto sent his mom a grateful look. Kushina smiled and nodded back. Hinata looked up into his face and let out a small gasp of surprise. She gently touched his cheek. Naruto, your whisker scars have come back. They have. He reached up and touched his other cheek. Sure enough, he felt the tiny ridges on his skin. Hey, I guess they have. It makes sense, I guess. Jiraiya let out a small cough and interrupted the lovely scene. I'm glad that you're okay, kid, but there is something we really need to discuss. The door to the mansion opened and a shadow clone stepped out looking panicked. Mom, can you change a diaper for me? Kushina gave him one of the most startled looks he'd ever seen. A diaper. With the door open, she could hear children shouting and babies crying. What is going on in there? Stepping into her home, Kushina stopped to just stare. Outside her front door, the scene was one of pure destruction. Inside, it looked like a nursery that had gone wild. There were children running around shouting and knocking things over. There were babies and infants being cradled in the arms of shadow clones while others were trying to somehow corral the children who were running around. Kushina turned around to look at her son who had also come inside. Hinata and many of the others were also coming and drawn by their curiosity. Naruto, what is all this? He shook his head a bit sadly. These 33 children are the last of the Uchiha. They should be young enough to eventually forget what their lives were before today. I see, Kushina answered quietly. Naruto, just what do you plan to do with these children? Kakashi asked. I'm going to let them be adopted. I'm sure some of them will develop the Sharingan, but from now on that ability will be shared among many clans. No one clan will have a monopoly on that dujutsu. Any children who are not adopted will become orphans of the state and be given new names. There are no more Uchihas in Konoha. I see, Kakashi replied. Is there any way to tell which of them will develop the Sharingan? Asuma asked curiously. Naruto shook his head. Nope, I couldn't even begin to guess what the percentage will be. 1 in 3, Gabriella said quietly. About 2/3 of all those living in the Uchiha district were civilians who could not activate their Sharingan. Naruto sent Gabriella a look that was not quite guilty but definitely not proud. Gabriella, what I did. I understand, Hokage-sama, Gabriella said. Every adult in the clan supported Ryuki, even if they were unable to actively fight. The entire clan was complicit in the rebellion. I consider the punishment just, and thank you for sparing at least some. Temari walked up to one of Naruto's shadow clones and took a crying baby from him. She carefully rocked him back and forth while singing a lullaby to him that her mother had sung to her. The baby soon quieted down. She looked over to Shikamaru, who knew what was coming next. Shika, I want to adopt him. But I thought you wanted us to have our own children. He protested. He already knew he would be changing a whole lot of diapers. I still do, but we can still adopt him. She gave him a firm look and he sighed, knowing there was no changing her mind. XXXXXXXXXX. Kakashi went over to a young boy, perhaps 4 or 5, and crying alone in the corner of the room. He carefully put his hand on the boy's shoulder. What is your name? The boy looked up nervously. Obito, he answered. Kakashi looked down at him in surprise. Come with me, Obito, and I promise I will take care of you. XXXXXXXXXX. Yugao and Hayate had both survived the battle and had already decided they had wasted enough time. They were going to get married and start a family. They decided to adopt a little girl who was probably around 3. XXXXXXXXXX. The Hyuga clan elders made the decision to adopt 4 of the children in the hope that they would one day marry blood Hyugas and create a new version of the Byakugan or Sharingan. XXXXXXXXXX. Inuzuka soon decided to take 2 of the children as replacements for the 2 who had been lost. XXXXXXXXXX. Alyssa had returned home soon after it was clear the battle was over. The sight of the bodies strewn across her home had been shocking, as had the news that Granduncle was among the lost. Please no, the little girl shut her eyes. Please don't make me look. Her mother put her hands gently but firmly on her shoulders. Open your eyes and don't look away. Alyssa did so and looked down at the body of her granduncle. This is a part of what it means to be ninja. Kushina told her. For most ninja, this is how life ends. All of us who travel this path must accept that we may be called upon to die a violent death. She stared down at his body. Except for the neck wound, he might have been sleeping while holding his sword. Why? She asked. Why must it be this way? We are the living swords and shields that protect this village, Alyssa. Kushina answered. We put our lives in danger so that this village and its people can live in safety. You will graduate the academy soon and receive the Hidayite. This will be your path. Do you still wish to be ninja? The little girl looked up at her mother. She hesitated, but nodded. I do, cousin. I want to keep the people safe. Now she was standing beside her mother as the orphans of the Uchiha clan were being adopted. Cousin, can I have a little brother? Kushina looked at her in surprise. You want me to adopt one of these children? Alyssa nodded eagerly. I want to have a little brother that I can help protect the same way Neeson has always protected me. Kushina thought about it. The truth was she loved being a mother. Taking care of children had always made her happy. She looked over to her son. Would you have an objection, Naruto? He shrugged. Of course not, Mom. You do realize that if I adopt one of them, that means you will have an Uchiha as a brother. Naruto shook his head. No, if you adopt someone, he will be Namikaze just like Alyssa. I will treat him as my brother, just as I have always treated Alyssa as my sister. Nodding, Kushina approached a 5-year-old boy. She knelt down and gently rubbed the top of his head. What is your name, child? Masaharu, the boy answered shyly. Well, Masaharu, my name is Kushina, and I will be your new mother. XXXXXXXXXX. In the end, the ninja present adopted all but 6 of the children. 3 boys and 3 girls ages ranging from 2 to 7 remained. Gabriella looked at the 6 remaining children and then turned to her husband. Haku, I want to adopt them. All 6. She nodded. They are all kin to me and I don't want them to end up in an orphanage. Do you really think we can take care of 6 children by ourselves? Gabriella smiled. By ourselves. We'll still be living here for the foreseeable future, which means we'll have plenty of help. Kushina shook her head, knowing who Gabriella thought would be giving her most of that help. XXXXXXXXXXX. During all of this, Naruto and some of his clones had been sitting at the dinner table working. One of his clones had gone to the tower to retrieve his seal. He'd also sent other clones to other tasks such as cleaning up the battlefield outside as well as the Uchiha compound. He had written up quite a few executive orders. He was finally ready to begin assigning missions. XXXXXXXXXXX. Yamato, Ibiki, and Ino, the 3 ninja he'd called for, came forward. He handed one order to Yamato and one to Ibiki. Yamato, you are be promoted to command of the Anbu, congratulations. After everything that's happened, I'm forced to question their loyalty. Even the ones who didn't openly side with Danzo obeyed his orders. He then looked to Ibiki. I want you to begin an investigation of every Anbu who did not come here to fight. Every last one. Ino, given your abilities, I'd like you to help. What do you want me to do with the ones that are disloyal but didn't actually turn on you? Ibiki asked. If they are root members, arrest them. If they are disloyal to me but have not acted on it, then dismiss them from the Anbu. Hokage-sama, I hate to say this, Yamato interjected. But there are still a percentage of the Anbu who have never fully accepted you as Hokage but remain loyal to the village. That's not good enough, Naruto said. Danzo and his root members could have said the exact same thing. The Anbu are expected to be the personal weapons of the Hokage. If any do not feel they can perform that role, then they cannot be Anbu, though they may continue to serve as regular ninja. It will take weeks to sort out the entire Anbu, Ibiki said. Take as long as you need, Naruto said. Just make sure I can trust whoever is felt. Naruto pulled out 4 more scrolls. Jiraiya and Kakashi, take however many ninja you want, but find Danzo, Kaharu, Homura, and Michio. These are warrants for their arrest. Take them alive if at all possible. He took several more scrolls out. Shikamaru and Shizune, please go to the tower and put these new orders into effect. Shikamaru took the orders and began looking through them. All the orders from Danzo and Ryuki were officially declared invalid. Naruto was activating Article 7 to place Konoha under martial law, thereby following the example of what Ryuki had done less than 24 hours earlier. He was ordering the gates shut and all ninja missions suspended. The Uchiha properties as well as the properties of all rebels were confiscated. The Uchiha compound was restricted and made off limits to all except those with the express permission of the Hokage. Shikamaru nodded as all the orders made good sense, until he got to the last one. He quirked an eyebrow and looked at Naruto. Harming any fox is hereby made a crime punishable by fine of 50,000 ryu and up to 6 months sentence of forced confinement. Killing any fox is hereby made a crime punishable by a fine up to 200,000 ryu and up to 3 years sentence of hard labor. Naruto, what does this have to do with putting things back in order? Nothing, Naruto admitted. It's part of a promise I made. Listen kid, all this is really great. Jiraiya interjected. But there's something we really do need to talk about that can't wait. He looked about the crowded room. Maybe we should go somewhere and talk in private. If this has to do with the little fact that Naruto has the Kyuubi's chakra again, don't bother. Shikamaru said. Everyone in the village who can sense chakra knows. And I think everyone would really appreciate an explanation. Shikamaru does have a point kid. The Kyuubi was extracted from you, so how can you have his chakra again? Naruto shrugged. This wasn't going to be a secret. I made a contract with the Kyuubi and with the foxes. In a day that had been absolutely full of surprises, that statement left the room silent. Troublesome, Shikamaru said. Jiraiya shook his head, not believing it. Kid, you can't bargain with one of the Biju, it's impossible. And I happen to know for a fact that there is no such thing as a fox contract. Oh really? Naruto bit his thumb and performed the hand signs. Summoning technique. There was a small puff of smoke. When the smoke had cleared, a large red fox sat patiently at Naruto's feet. Jiraiya gaped at the small animal. That's impossible. So, Naruto smiled. XXXXXXXXXX. Kakashi and Jiraiya had not expected to find Danzo in his home. They had gone there simply in hopes of finding some clue as to his true location. But he had been there. They found him lying on the floor of his study surrounded by a pool of blood. A short sword driven through his chest, his body already growing cold. Bastard took the easy way out. Jiraiya complained. Given his own past, Kakashi had never thought well of suicide, but he merely shrugged. Well, at least he knew better than to try and run once he'd lost. What do you think of poor Michio? They had found his body lying in the basement, obviously dead for some hours. I'm guessing he probably got cold feet, Kakashi said. Brave enough to rebel but not actually fight. Jiraiya shook his head in disgust. At least Danzo and Ryuki had the courage of their convictions. If they hadn't, there would be a lot more people alive right now. Jiraiya merely grunted. Kakashi was right, but if there was one thing Jiraiya truly admired, it was guts, even when those guts were used in a bad cause. Well, let's see if we can find the other two as easily. XXXXXXXXXX. Capturing Kaharu and Homura actually proved very easy. Both were found in their homes and offered no resistance. After a long interrogation session assisted by Ino, the two of them were sent to the tower where Naruto now was. Under heavy guard, but without chains, they were marched into the Hokage's office where the Hokage awaited. Having dealt with the combined forces of Uchiha and Root, Naruto felt confident he could deal with these two. He allowed them to approach his desk and place 2 pieces of paper and 2 pens in front of them. Following your interrogations, it is clear that you both conspired with Danzo and Ryuki to overthrow me and place Ryuki as head of the government. What is more, Kaharu directly assisted in the attempt on my life by placing a genjutsu on my would-be assassin. That is true, Kaharu admitted. It had come out during the interrogation, so there was no point in denying it now. We will not plead for mercy, we know the punishment for our actions. Homura said calmly. You both deserve death, Naruto told them flatly, but then gave a disappointed shake of his head. However, you were both the friends and teammates of the third Hokage. Out of respect for him, I will show you both mercy. He nodded towards the paper and pens. Each of you write out a resignation, not only from the council but from the village as well. Then take off your Hittites. I will give you 1 hour to leave this village with whatever you can carry. The rest of your possessions will be confiscated. Go wherever you like so long as it is at least 200 miles from Konoha. Banishment, Kaharu said in surprise. That's right. I was born in this village, it is the only home I have ever known. Kaharu protested. You should have thought of that before you rebelled. Naruto said coldly. I am already showing you more mercy than you deserve and more than I showed the Uchiha. Your only options are exile or immediate execution. In the end, they both decided to write out their resignations and surrender their Hittites. XXXXXXXXXX. Gamabunta looked down at the young man. Jiraiya had again summoned him to the Namikaze estates. Not to fight this time, but to instead hear Naruto's apology for giving up the frog summoning contract. I am truly sorry, Naruto told him. It was a huge honor to be able to work with you and your brethren. I especially enjoyed working with Gamakichi. Gamabunta slowly nodded. Don't worry about it, it sounds to me like you had no real choice. Besides, I faced the Kyuubi, I'm willing to admit I'm not in his class when it comes to raw power. I am very sorry to lose you though. I cared for your father and you were a good henchman. In that case, would you consider letting my uncle sign the contract? It would mean a lot to me if the frogs could become the Uzumaki clan summons. I'll think about it. With that, Gamabunta disappeared with a huge puff of smoke. It was now late afternoon. The bodies had been cleared out. The damage to the estates would take much longer to repair. Everyone in the village now knew that there had been an unsuccessful coup attempt. They also knew that the Uchiha clan had been wiped out except for some children. The fact that Naruto had regained the power of the Kyuubi had also been announced, but the specifics were left out for now. The military police were gone, of course, the non-Uchiha members had all been arrested for their part in supporting the coup. But the ISF and at least part of the Anbu were functioning to maintain order. Still, it would still take a while to fully restore things. Kid, we need to talk. What about Pervy Granddad? In case you've forgotten, the Akatsuki still have Yugito. She only has 3 days left and this one is mostly gone. It will take a full day to reach aim. We have to begin assembling an army immediately. Jiraiya was surprised to see Naruto shake his head. I haven't forgotten about her or about the Akatsuki. But I won't be taking the army. I have something else in mind. Like what, kid? Naruto told him. Jiraiya stared at him. Are you serious? When it comes to my precious people, I am always serious. Kid, what you're wanting to do, it's Jiraiya was trying to find a word strong enough. According to your prophecy, there are only 2 options. Naruto said quietly. Either I bring the world peace or I bring total destruction. Nothing in between, right? If those are the stakes, I can't hold back. Jiraiya could only nod. In that case, kid, I want to ask you a favor. XXXXXXXXXXX. Walking back into his home, he could smell dinner cooking and wandered into the kitchen. Is that your ramen I smell? Looking up from the stove, Kushina smiled and nodded. It is. I think you deserve a special treat tonight. Thanks, Mom. Listen, I have to go take care of something and it will probably take about an hour, so I may be a little late to dinner. That's fine, son. What are you taking care of? Well, I'm about to go rescue Yugito, exterminate Akatsuki, save the world, and probably level most of Rain Village. He thought about it for a second. Yeah, an hour should about do it. Kushina gawked at her son. This really was a day for surprises. Naruto. Bye, Mom. He disappeared in a yellow flash. XXXXXXXXXXX. Somewhere in a gray void, the Kyuubi opened an eager eye and began to grin. 100. Settle all accounts. Author's notes. All right, I know I said I wanted to end the story at chapter 100. Unfortunately, doing that would require making an uber long chapter, which I don't think would flow well. So I am going to write an epilogue and officially end this story on chapter 101. I trust people won't be too upset by that. Some of you have asked about a sequel to this story. Well, I have decided instead to write a prequel. I have already posted it. It's called A Mother's Love, The Life of Kushina. So one more chapter to go. XXXXXXXXXXX. Upon their return to the Rain Village, everything had been prepared. All the surviving members of Akatsuki were present. For this final ceremony, Ha had required them all to be here. As a Mekage, he had alerted all his ninja to secure not only the temple but the village from possible attack. The moment was finally at hand, a new golden age of peace. With the power he would have at his disposal, he would become a new emperor, and each of the Akatsuki would be given a part of the world to rule over as warlords in his name. And any who disturbed his peace would meet a swift end. XXXXXXXXXXX. It is almost time, he said calmly. In 3 days the ceremony of transformation will be completed and a new all-powerful Biju will be born. Conan looked at him nervously. She had believed in him, followed him, fought at his side, and she had always trusted him. But now that they were nearly to the end, her doubts weren't just whispering to her, they were shouting. Pain, are you sure? She asked quietly. He looked over to her. What do you mean? She took a deep breath. I am wondering about what Jiraiya Sesne said. He thought that this was madness. He simply does not understand, Pain reassured her. How could he? He is old and set in his ways, his mind closed to new possibilities. She looked at him with worry. He said we would destroy the world. He would say anything to try and stop us. But I won't let his words stop me, especially not now that I am so close. He looked at her imploringly. You aren't worried, are you? She set herself and decided to finally tell him the truth. I have always been worried about this. But out of loyalty for you, I have always set my fears aside. The final goal is noble and worthwhile. Who could possibly be against lasting peace? But to create a Biju. Does that not seem like madness to you? The master jutsu will work. Pain said firmly. He refused to listen to any doubt. Have I ever failed you, Conan, or let you down? No, never, not even once. Then trust in me just once more. He held out his hand to her. I cannot do this without you. And once more, as in so many other times, she decided to set aside her fears and trust in him. She reached out and took his hand. I trust in you, she said. To the end. XXXXXXXXXX. The abandoned temple that had been their secret base was no longer abandoned. 100 Rain ninja stood guard inside and immediately outside of it. Beyond the village walls, his ninja were patrolling aggressively, searching for any possible threat. Within the temple, some of his men not only watched but chanted and spoke prayers. Many of them wanted to worship him as a living god. Pain had already decided that once he ruled the world, he would allow a cult to be formed. It might make a useful tool. As his men watched, the members of Akatsuki performed the ceremony. They stood on the fingers of the great statue as the chakra was slowly extracted from the last Jinchuriki. So just what happens once this ultimate Biju is created? Kabuto asked. I will send it out to destroy one of the ninja villages as a demonstration of my power. Pain replied. Then I will give all of them the chance to surrender to me and spare their lands. Which village? Sasori questioned. Kumo, Pain answered. Sasori chuckled. So much for the non-aggression treaty. Yeah, Deidara said cheerfully. I say blow up Iwa. I have made my choice, Pain answered. If after I demonstrate my power Iwa refuses to surrender, then they will be destroyed. Who the fuck cares anyway? Hidan sounded annoyed. I'm just glad there won't be any more of these damn long-ass ceremonies. You're kidding, right? Kakuzu said. I thought you loved long ceremonies. Only when they fucking involve Jashin. Kakuzu laughed. Well, I'm just looking forward to being a warlord. Making a fortune will be too easy then. So what lands will I rule? Toby wants to be the boss in Fire Country and make all the leaf nins serve Toby, especially the ones with red eyes. You mean the Uchiha, Kabuto clarified. Toba's head nodded up and down. Thank you Kabuto-senpai, yes Toby wants the Uchihas to be Toba's slaves. I have already agreed to that. Pain said, Konoha and all of Fire Country will be yours to do with as you please. Provided they are wise enough to surrender of course. The Uchiha will be slaves or ashes, either one makes Toby happy. Kabuto looked at him curiously. Why the sudden interest in the Uchiha? They were mean to Toby a long time ago, so Toby does not like them. The conversation was brought to a sudden halt by a yellow flash down next to Yugito. XXXXXXXXXXX. The Akatsuki never bothered to search the Jinchuriki who were brought in for extraction. When Naruto had been captured, he'd been wearing a necklace worth a pair of gold mines and the mountains on top of them. No one had bothered to remove it from him. Just as no one had thought to check Yugito's packs where a trikunai was located. XXXXXXXXXXX. The instant Naruto appeared, 100 kunai and shuriken came down on him. He didn't bother trying to avoid them. The red chakra simply appeared and they bounced away harmlessly. Since making the contract, he had discovered that the red chakra now acted as an ultimate defense, protecting him from danger even if he was unaware of it. Stop! Pain shouted. If any of you harm the Jinchuriki by mistake, I will have you killed. Her name is Yugito. Naruto called out. And she is not the one in danger now. She was floating suspended in the air as chakra was slowly being drawn from her mouth and eyes. He put his hands on her shoulders and willed the red chakra to flow out around her until they were both protected by it. She remained unconscious with chakra oozing out of her. What do you think you are doing? Pain demanded. You have no idea what you are interfering with. Actually, Pain, you're the one who has no idea. You may be pretty smart when it comes to jutsu, but what you're doing here will only end in disaster. It will not only fail, it will destroy the world. Pain shook his head. I can control this power. No, you can't, even if you do think you're Kami, you're not. Naruto said, and only Kami could do what you have in mind, create a living being. You know nothing, Pain replied. What I am doing will bring the world peace. Naruto shrugged. I suppose that's true at any rate. I mean, with everyone dead, there won't be any more fighting. But that's not the sort of peace I want. Naruto looked at him. You want peace and you want to protect your village. I can understand that because I want those things too, but the path you've chosen is the wrong one. It is the only one. Pain stated. We live in a world filled with blood and violence, filled with small men who prey upon the weak. In such a world, peace must be imposed, and for it to be a lasting peace, it must be imposed by a power so great none would ever try to oppose it. And what good does it do you if you're destroyed trying to gain this power? Naruto sighed and looked around at all the people present. He knew how this was going to end, but he would keep his promise. Jiraiya asked me to tell you that he was sorry for failing you, Konan, and Nagato. He says he should have kept you with him and made sure that you were all right. He wants you to know that he did what he thought best at the time and was sorry that it was not enough. Konan seemed genuinely moved while Pain nodded. For what it is worth, I do not blame Jiraiya. He was a foreigner and he owed us nothing. What he did for us was a great kindness, and for that he will always have my thanks and my respect. He also asked me to make you and Konan a last offer. End your efforts at acquiring the Biju, release Yugito, and agree to disband Akatsuki, and I will leave you in peace and never return. Pain looked him with a slight frown. You are in no position to dictate to me. I fully acknowledge you are a powerful ninja, but Itachi was able to defeat you. What can you do against not only all of Akatsuki but an entire village as well? Annihilate you, Naruto answered quietly. Please believe me when I say I have power enough to destroy you all. I would rather not do that, but I am here today to settle all accounts and end the threat of Akatsuki once and for all. I cannot be bluffed, Pain said. Sasori suddenly spoke up. The demonic chakra, how are you able to wield it? You no longer possess the Kyuubi. I have a contract with the Kyuubi, which means all his power is at my disposal. Naruto said calmly. The surprise was obvious on most of their faces. Behind him he could hear the rain nin suddenly whispering to one another. That is a lie, Pain accused loudly. All the whispers halted. Perhaps you do somehow retain a small remnant of the Kyuubi's power, but that is nothing that we cannot handle. Around Naruto, 5 ninjas suddenly appeared in puffs of smoke. They were all wearing the black robes with red clouds. They had something else in common as well. They all have the same Jujutsu, the Rinnegan, I suppose. Naruto noted. That is correct, these are the 6 paths of pain. Naruto halted for a moment and then began to laugh. You find something amusing in all this? Naruto needed a moment before he could talk. Sorry, it's just that Itachi told me that you were 6 just before he died. It drove me crazy trying to figure out what he meant. My other selves are extremely formidable. Pain explained. You will be no match for them. Really? 5 arms of red chakra leapt out. They were too close to dodge and all 5 were caught. Naruto wasted no time in crushing them and sending their blood spewing into the air. Is that all it comes down to? Who has more power? One by one, 4 tails emerged from out of the red chakra. The ordinary ninja in the temple began to carefully back away from him. The only thing that kept them from running was that their god was watching. As for the Akatsuki, all of them began looking very nervous except for Pain and the one in the orange mask. How can you have this level of power without the Kyuubi inside you? Kabuto asked. I already told you, Naruto took out a kunai. I have a contract with the Kyuubi. That is impossible, Pain said firmly. The Kyuubi is bound within this prison. Naruto just smiled. Funny thing, people keep telling me the things I do are impossible, and I just keep doing them anyway. Now I'll give you one final chance to spare your village and yourself. Give this up. Never, he answered. Conan looked very fearful. All right then, let me show you my real power. With that he sliced open his palm. I don't suppose that any of you are seal masters by any chance. Seeing their stares he shook his head. I don't suppose it matters, none of you strike me as the self-sacrificing type. He performed a few hand signs. Summoning of the Kyuubi. With that the earth immediately began to shake. Naruto wrapped both arms around Yugito protectively and expanded the chakra out around them into the shape of a small dome. Along with the violent shaking came the sound of cracking as stone began to split apart. Tiles and chunks of brick and marble began to rain down. Some of the aim began panicking and started to run, the rest took cover as best they could. The temple was not the only thing breaking. The fingers went first. The hands of the grotesque statue snapped and crashed down onto a temple floor. The Akatsuki who had been standing on them leapt away without trouble. What the fuck is going on here? Hidan shouted. It's beautiful, yeah. Deidara created a large clay bird and hopped onto its back. Sasori landed a safe distance away and simply eyed Naruto. His bulky body did not seem to feel the debris falling on him. Kabuto had always had an excellent sense of self-preservation, and it was telling him to get out. He quickly disappeared. Conan created a large pair of wings to shelter under. She stood near Pain so that she could protect him as well. We should get out of here. She yelled to him. He did not hear her. All he could see or hear was the main part of the statue and the large crack running down the middle of it. Pain stood there and stared at it fascinated, drawn to it like a moth to a flame. And as the crack widened he saw the most beautiful white light. Conan could feel the power mounting behind the crack and she felt terror. Her first impulse was to get away and save herself, but she couldn't abandon him. She grabbed his shoulder and shook him roughly, screaming at him. Pain, we have to go. It's going to. The word she would have used was explode, but it never left her mouth. All at once the prison gave way and the power inside was released. The explosion was like 10,000 tags going off at once. The temple and everything within 10 city blocks was leveled and completely destroyed. Everyone in the blast radius died immediately. Except for Naruto and Yugito. When the explosion ended he saw 6 forms of pure white light race into the sky like comets. They headed into different directions and were quickly gone from sight. Some of the light flowed rapidly back into Yugito. That too was quickly gone from sight. With all the chakra returned to her, Yugito seemed to breathe easier, though she remained unconscious. That left one light hanging in the air above them. As Naruto watched it began to thicken and expand, growing in size and in mass. The light that had started out as pure white began to take on a reddish tint. The huge lump began to grow 4 legs and a head with a snout. 9 distinct tails grew. The legs slammed down into the crater that had once been a temple. The monster reared his head back and let loose a long and bloodthirsty howl. After 16 years the Kyuubi once more walked the earth. Naruto found himself again staring up at the monster. Only this time it wasn't a dreamscape, he was in the real world and he had just set the Kyuubi free. A little late he wondered if contracts without paper were binding. Kyuubi, he shouted. The creature's huge head bent down and 2 orange eyes looked down at him. The lips pulled back to reveal 2 long rows of teeth. Well, it looks like you have kept your end of the bargain and I shall keep mine. Well, that is really, really good to know. So you have to obey me, right? The eyelids came down a bit. Yes. All right, did any of the Akatsuki survive? The fox nodded his huge head. Yes, 2 members, Uchiha Madara and Yakushi Kabuto. An Uchiha, Naruto shouted. You mean there was another Uchiha in Akatsuki besides Itachi? Madara was the original founder of Akatsuki. The fox grinned. There was much more but he deliberately chose not to share. Oh well, he's not going to be recruiting any new members. I want them both dead. Done. The Kyuubi grinned down at him. You realize of course that there will be a certain amount of collateral damage. Which is your way of saying you're going to level most of the village to get them? Naruto frowned but nodded. Cause as little damage and loss of life as possible, but I want Akatsuki destroyed once and for all. Laughing the fox leapt away eager to finally get to play again after his long confinement. XXXXXXXXXX. Madara had thrown away his mask and was fleeing in mindless terror. A huge paw came crashing down in front of him and he was forced to stop. Oh, you can do better than that. The fox laughed. Give me a good chase before I eat you. Madara shook as he looked up at the face of the grinning beast. You cannot do this. We have a contract. The fox's laughter boomed out again. We had a contract. It was broken the instant you imprisoned me. Now run some more, I am having fun. His ability to become intangible was useless against the Kyuubi. He was left with no choice but to run again. Like a cat or fox playing with a mouse, the Kyuubi gave chase. XXXXXXXXXX. The Kyuubi eventually returned with the half-chewed-up body of Kabuto, which he promptly spat out. The Uchiha he had eaten. With the fight over, Naruto dismissed the Kyuubi. He took a quick survey of the village. From what he could see, there weren't many buildings left standing. He was sure the people of Rain Country would blame him for releasing the Kyuubi. But Akatsuki was at long last completely gone. To him that was a victory no matter the cost. XXXXXXXXXX. Yugito slowly opened her eyes. She looked up to see the face that she most wanted to see. Naruto, is that you? He gave her a smile. Afraid so. She reached up and gently touched his cheek with her hand. You have whiskers. He laughed. I'll explain later. You came for me. She shook her head. Yeah, I did. She just stared up at him. She felt pretty weak, but she was in his arms, somehow that made it all right. Why would you do that? He leaned down and gave her a slow and gentle kiss. Because you are precious to me and I would never abandon you. She felt her face blush and her heartbeat pick up. He stood up holding her in his arms bridal style. Let's go home, Yugito-chan, my mom is making her special ramen. Home. He smiled and nodded. Home. They disappeared in a flash of yellow. Spoiler. 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 Author's note, again, if any of you do not want to know what is going on in the manga, read no further. After Sasuke's statement of his new goal, he has now officially become a villain and has to die. He has crossed a final line where he is no longer deserving of any sympathy whatsoever. Up until this point I disliked Sasuke but thought he would ultimately be redeemed thanks to the friendship and love of Naruto and Sakura. But he no longer deserves redemption. He deliberately betrayed his village to pursue his own personal vendetta. He nearly killed his best friend in pursuit of this vengeance. Then shortly after finally killing Itachi, he meets a complete stranger who tells him a story. And that justifies wanting to now pursue vengeance against Konoha and the only people who have ever truly cared about him. He is placing more faith in a stranger's tale than he is in the words and actions of people he has known for most of his life. So of course he is now justified in wanting Naruto, Sakura, Kakashi, Shikamaru, etc. dead because apparently they're to blame for what happened to the Uchiha clan, along with all the other innocents who live in the village. With that one statement, Sasuke is now a worse traitor than even Orochimaru was. He is an enemy of Konoha now by choice. He has to die. 101. Epilogue. Author's notes. Well, this is it. This chapter brings the story to an end. I want to thank all of you who have read it, and I especially want to thank everyone who took the time to leave a review. It still amazes me how popular this story has been. As I already said, I have begun a prequel. I have no plans for a sequel, but I will leave that possibility open. Now just one last rant before I begin the final chapter. I fully realize that a lot of people disliked some of the things I did in this story. Naruto was too powerful, too smart, too perfect. Hinata and Naruto got together too soon. I crippled Neji. I killed Gaara, Kankuro, Sasuke, Sakura, Tsunade. I made Yugito a love interest, and on and on. I read every review and every private message sent to me. The ones offering constructive criticism I honestly considered. The ones that just told me they didn't like my story I just ignored. I realized a very long time ago that you will never make everyone happy, and in trying to do so you will only end up taking something unique and reducing it to the lowest common denominator. As proof of this, just look at the absolute mindless garbage that is 90% of all films and TV shows. Yes, I killed characters, and yes, I did things some people hated. But I told my story and the story I liked. And in the end, isn't that the whole point of this website? The entire point of writing a story to begin with is to give voice to your own thoughts and imagination. I really enjoyed writing this. The fact that others enjoyed reading it I count as just a huge bonus. For which I thank you. XXXXXXXXXX. 2 months later. He was sitting in the waiting room nervously. Yugito, his second wife, was sitting next to him holding his hand trying to comfort him. His mom, Alyssa, his new brother Masaharu, Uncle Shinzo, his niece and Kiba were all there waiting with him. Kushina saw the look on her son's face and grinned. You don't need to be so nervous, Naruto-kun, everything is fine. I know that, but I just can't help it. A couple hours passed before Shizune came out. Everyone jumped to their feet. Is everything all right? Naruto asked. How is Hinata-chan? Shizune smiled and motioned for calm. Mother and son are both doing fine. Come with me. They all followed close behind as she took them to a private room on the second floor. There an exhausted-looking Hinata held a small bundle in her arms as Neji smiled down. Hinata looked up at her husband and gave him a gentle and loving smile. Naruto-kun, there is someone here who wants to meet you. Naruto walked to her side and looked down at the tiny little person in her arms. She gently held him out to his father and he oh so carefully took him. Kushina, Hinata, and Neji all told him how to hold a baby. Carefully supporting him, Naruto looked down into the baby's face. His son already had a little blonde hair and his eyes were open. They were a blue much lighter than his own, and on each of his little cheeks were 3 scars. It amazed and scared him how much he loved his son. It didn't seem possible that someone you had only just met could get such a hold on your heart. Gently he leaned down and kissed his son's forehead. Hello Minato-kun, I'm your dad, and I love you very much. XXXXXXXXXXX. 5 years later. A 21-year-old Naruto looked up from the maps. Despite his age, his eyes had weariness in them. In one way or another, he had been fighting to make his dreams come true his entire life. Sometimes in moments like these, the exhaustion from all that struggle came through. But even if his eyes held some fatigue, they also held a greater strength and resolve. He wasn't just fighting for himself or his family now. He was fighting for everyone. He was fighting to bring on a new golden age of peace to the world. This is the last battle, Naruto told them. After today the war will be over and there will be no more killing. A pale and weary-looking Jiraiya shook his head. There will always be battles to be fought. Even when this war ends and peace begins again, there will still be enemies out there somewhere. Naruto nodded slowly. I guess there will be, he admitted quietly. But there won't be any more wars. Naruto looked closely at the man who had been his sensei and a kindly grandfather to him. Jiraiya was dying of liver failure. A slow painful death, and not the kind of heroic end the old pervert had always pictured for himself. He had always said he wanted to end his life in a glorious battle. He looked at the other faces in the command tent. His mom, Kakashi, and Asuma were also glancing towards Jiraiya. They all knew. The tent flap opened and his aide walked in. She was a 17-year-old Chunin wearing a black and red bodysuit. Her long dark hair was tied in a ponytail with a pink bow. On her ring finger was an engagement ring from Sarutobi Konohamaru. She had an excited smile on her face. Nisan, the cages are coming out under flag of truce. Alyssa, her mother said sharply, what have I told you about Campo discipline? The girl gave her mother an amused look and then performed a ridiculously deep bow to her older brother. Oh, forgive me, great and powerful Hokage-sama. Naruto grinned and rubbed the top of her head affectionately. All right, Alyssa-chan, but just this once. Kushina shook her head. You know you're not helping. Kakashi decided to try and bring things back on track. It looks like they've accepted your offer to parley. It's a waste of time, Jiraiya croaked. They'll never agree to your terms. Probably not, Naruto admitted. But if there's any chance to save lives, I have to try. With that, he left the meeting. None of them tried to argue him out of it. They all knew he was going no matter what. Besides, with his ultimate defense, there was no chance that the cages could do him any harm even if they were stupid enough to try. XXXXXXXXXX. As he left the command tent, people saluted him or called greetings. He was surrounded by familiar faces. Haku and Gabriella were talking with Kiba and Tayuya. Along with their 6 adopted children, the Momochis had a natural-born son and daughter. They had just recently moved out of the Namikaze estates and into their own mansion. It had seemed odd at first to know there were Uchiha children in his home, but after a while they had become part of the family. In a way that saddened him. The Uchiha were just people like everyone else, if only Ryuki and a few others could have understood that. Kakashi had grown extremely close to his son Obito and they were hardly ever seen apart in the village. Kiba and Tayuya had finally gotten married a year ago. Tayuya had given birth to healthy baby boy 4 months later. Even though she was occasionally seen chasing him around the village threatening to cut his balls off, they were a happy couple. He spotted Ino and Choji exchanging a kiss, no doubt for added luck. Hinata's old rival had found the man of her dreams and they were very happy with 2 little girls. Seeing Ino and Choji immediately made him think about Shika and Tamari back in the village. Shika was acting Hokage while Tamari was stuck there due to good old rule number 77. Naruto laughed at the irony of it. Tamari had been trying to get pregnant for 5 years without success. This of course had led to Shikamaru complaining about being forced to try and get his wife pregnant when he's rather be relaxing. That in turn usually led to Kiba mocking him for complaining about having to have sex with a beautiful woman. Then of course Tamari had gotten pregnant on the eve of the climatic final battle of the war and been forced to remain home. Not too surprisingly, she blamed Shika. Hinata was also home due to Rule 77. She was going to have their 3rd child. While she was there, she would look after their son as well as their 3-year-old daughter, Hana. She would also take care of the 4-year-old son he and Yugito had. The boy's name was Junsaku. He missed all his children terribly. That was the worst thing about having to be out on campaign, having to be away from the ones you loved. He promised himself that when this war was over he was never leaving Konoha again unless he could take the whole family with him. Thinking about family, he also thought about Uncle Shinzo. He had a total of 8 children now from his 3 wives. Just as with his own family, all of Shinzu's children were being brought up to see each other as brothers and sisters. Each child had a mom and 2 aunts. Shinzu's 3 eldest sons were especially close as only brothers could be. Shinzo was already talking about the day the 3 of them would be a genin squad. He spotted Tenten and her genin squad. Her son Hizashi was living back in the Hyuga compound. With his father Neji, the clan head. The Hyuga clan really had changed and Naruto was very proud to have been the catalyst. He finally found the person he's been looking for. Coming up from behind, he suddenly grabbed her and gave her a kiss. Did I surprise you? Yugito smiled at him. No silly, I smelled you sneaking up on me the whole way. He shook his head. One of these days I am going to surprise you. Good luck. The cages have come out to parley, since there are 2 of them you want to come with me so the numbers are even. A cat-like grin played across her face. I wouldn't miss it for the world. XXXXXXXXXXX. The Reikage and the Tsuchikage stood in the ground between the 2 armies. Behind them was a force of about 4,000 rock and lightning nin. Before them was an army of about 5,000 with banners from every other ninja village including Mist and Sand. This was the army of the Grand Alliance, and it was the army of the Fox Lord, Namikaze Naruto. All alone the lands of Earth and Lightning had struggled to resist the growing economic and military might of the Alliance. Knowing they stood little chance in an open war, they had instead launched a campaign of terror with assassinations and bombing and uprisings, all aimed at weakening the Alliance. But in the end it had led the 6th Hokage to declare war on their lands, and now this would be the decisive battle. Unless they could come to some sort of agreement. He's coming, the Tsuchikage said. And it looks like he is bringing his wife. Yugito, the suddenly nervous Reikage asked. The Tsuchikage smirked. Oh, that's right, she scares you, doesn't she? Don't mock me, the Reikage said. If you had ever seen her angry, you would be scared too. Naruto and Yugito approached them. Bows and pleasantries were exchanged. Yugito smiled at the Reikage hungrily and she could smell his fear. Well then, you asked for this parley, the Tsuchikage began. What do you want to discuss? Naruto smiled. Since I'm in sight, aren't all the Iwanin supposed to retreat? Since the Tsuchikage did not respond to his little joke, Naruto continued. My terms haven't changed. You and your families must surrender to me. You will be given spacious homes in the village of Konoha and treated well, but you will not be allowed to leave. Your nations must surrender unconditionally and end the terror attacks. Both of your countries will be allowed to join the Grand Alliance once I am satisfied they will honor their obligations. Think carefully before you answer, my terms are generous. We don't need to think about it, the Tsuchikage spat. Your terms will leave us your slaves. Naruto grimaced thinking about his uncle all those years ago. Unlike Iwa, Konoha does not keep slaves. Your country will have the same rights as all other alliance members. So you would try and reduce us to the same status as waterfall or grass? The Tsuchikage demanded. That's right, Naruto stated. All the members are equals and follow the same laws and hold the same obligations to one another. When your 2 nations join, there will be an end to war. Do you truly believe that? The Reikage asked. Is that really your goal or just a pretty sounding piece of propaganda? Naruto looked at him firmly. I mean to bring peace to this world and I will. Whether you live to see it or not is entirely up to you. And what place do ninja have in a world of peace? The Tsuchikage mocked. Some will remain warriors, no doubt. Naruto answered. There will always be a need for soldiers and a police force to keep the peace and maintain order. But jutsus and chakra can have uses besides killing. The greatest healers in the world are medic nins. The greatest builders in the world are earth-type ninja. Ninja can bring water where it is needed, or wind to drive ships. Ninja can provide swift and certain transport of mail and goods and 100 other tasks that do not require killing. There will always be a place for ninja in this world. The Tsuchikage shook his head, refusing to see it. We are the greatest warriors this world has ever known. That is our place. To do what you suggest would strip us of all honor and glory. What I suggest is a way for us to live without pointless wars and the waste they cause. I've had enough, the Tsuchikage turned to go. There is no possibility of agreement. The Reikage also turned to leave. I'll be seeing you soon. Yugito purred. Naruto shook his head sadly. Why does it always come to this? XXXXXXXXXXX. He allowed the cages to return and officially end the truce before he walked out well in front of his army. Just as he went, a hand fell on his shoulder. He turned and saw who it was. Kid, Jiraiya's voice croaked. Let me take the lead. Naruto looked at the old man who he loved. Granddad. He smiled one of his old happy smiles. Come on, kid, do this one last favor for me. We both know I'm dying, at most I have maybe 6 months left. My life has been a great story, kid, one filled with adventure and romance and joy and sorrow. But every story has to end sometime. Me dying in a hospital bed just doesn't cut it. Now, going out all alone against an enemy army. Now that's a death worthy of a Sannin. Naruto looked at the man. He suddenly reached out and pulled him into a fierce hug. I love you, Previ Granddad. I love you too, kid. I love you too. XXXXXXXXXXX. Jiraiya stood out before the entire army, every eye was on him. He smiled. This was much better than slowly wasting away. He looked out towards the enemy. The brave hero went fearlessly forward against the enemy. He met his end like a true warrior. He nodded happily. That was the perfect ending. He bit down on his thumb. Just one more time. Summoning technique. Out of a huge puff of smoke, Gamabunta appeared. Jiraiya was glad that the Uzumaki would have the toad summoning contract once he was gone. Gamabunta looked up at the ninja sitting on his head. This is it, isn't it, Jiraiya? Yeah, it is. Jiraiya took out a flask and filled a cup. Will you have a last drink with me, Bunta? It would be an honor. He put out his tongue and Jiraiya poured the contents of the flask onto it as he gulped down his own. All right, Bunta, what do you say? One last time. The giant frog nodded and drew his sword. Right. He leapt forward and together he and Jiraiya went into the battle. XXXXXXXXXXX. The forces of the Grand Alliance did not go forward. That was what Jiraiya had wanted. So instead he and all his ninja watched as Gamabunta delivered horrible destruction down on the enemy until his own wounds forced him to withdraw. Jiraiya was then left all alone in the middle of an enemy army. They all came at him at once, but it took them 10 minutes to finally bring the old man down. Naruto lowered his head in respect and wiped his tears away. That had been a death worthy of a Sannin. When he looked back up again he saw the enemy was rushing towards him. He smiled. Taking out a kunai he sliced his palm. Summoning of the Kyuubi. He rode upon the head of the mighty nine-tailed fox. Just the mere sight of the Kyuubi and the sense of his malevolent chakra was enough to bring the enemy army to a halt. The Kyuubi chuckled and Naruto knew the baka fox wanted to play. The Kyuubi looked up at the man standing on his forehead. Well, you summoned me. Do you have an order for me or not? Naruto looked at the enemy army before him. Sick 'em. The Kyuubi howled with laughter and did exactly that. XXXXXXXXXX. The actual fighting lasted less than half an hour. Yugito had gone in and dealt with the Raikage personally. Otherwise all the fighting had been done by Naruto and the Kyuubi. Naruto had ordered the army to stay where it was unless attacked. Thus at the end of the battle the forces on one side had been wiped out almost to the last man while the forces on the other side had suffered exactly one casualty. It would go down as one of the most decisive victories in history and one of the most important. For with this victory the way to the unification of the whole continent was now open. XXXXXXXXXX. 500 years later. The academy teacher was looking at his students. All right class, we are going to do a review. As one they all moaned. Ignoring that he began. We'll start with an easy one. Who was the sixth Hokage of Konoha? Every hand rose. Anyone who didn't know the answer to such an easy question was going to fail the test tomorrow. He pointed to a boy. Namikaze Naruto, Momochi Jobi said. The teacher nodded. What were some of his accomplishments? More hands rose. He nodded to a pink-haired boy. Hiruno Sasuke spoke eagerly, happy to show off what he knew. He established 2 new clans here, the Uzumaki and the Momochi. He was the founder of the Grand Alliance and its first president. He brought an end to the age of warring nations and began the Pax Konoha, the peace that has lasted ever since. He was also the one to bind the Kyuubi to the service of the Fox clan, the Namikaze. The teacher nodded pleased. The students all mocked him with whispers of teacher's pet. He looked at his laziest student. Nara Shikato, can you name me another accomplishment of the 6th Hokages? The boy lifted his head up. He changed what it meant to be ninja. The boy put his head back down again. Please explain, the teacher insisted. Shikato raised his head again. Bothersome, he muttered. In the age of warring nations all ninja were expected to be warriors. But now a ninja is simply someone who is able to use chakra. A ninja can be anything from a soldier to a doctor to a farmer. Seeing the teacher nod, the boy put his head back down. Was Namikaze Naruto always well respected? He pointed to a blonde girl. No, Yamanaka Kara answered. As a young child he was hated due to his being the Kyuubi's container. His mother killed everyone who threatened him. The teacher nodded. That is something all of you should remember, impressions can change over time. Someone who is a villain can become a hero, and a hero can end up a villain. Now who can tell me about the unknown clan? He pointed to a dark-haired boy. Hitaki Obito answered. There was once a clan who revolted against the Hokage and tried to kill him. The Hokage ordered all records of the clan destroyed. The teacher grinned. And what was this clan's name? The boy shook his head. He wasn't about to fall for such a simple trick question. No one knows. The clan's name was lost as well as their abilities and even the exact reason why they rebelled. It is known that the Hokage took revenge by killing all of them and exterminating the clan. What were some of the names the 6th Hokage was known by? I'll answer that one. A girl's voice called out. The teacher was not surprised that his top student would want to answer that question. By all means, Namikaze Kushina. The girl first took her pet fox from her lap and set him down on her desk. She then stood so she had everyone's attention. She had long flowing red hair, green eyes, and a mischievous grin. On each cheek were 3 scars. One day she would replace her father as the summoner of the Fox clan. She had on the black and red battle suit that both the Uzumaki and Namikaze clans wore. The only way to tell them apart was the clan patch. The Uzumaki's was a whirlpool. The Namikaze had a grinning fox with 9 tails. Namikaze Naruto was the son of the 4th Hokage and the father of the 8th. He is recognized by most to be the greatest ninja who ever lived. In our home he has a memorial listing all his names and titles. She cleared her throat. He was a loving son, a good brother, a devoted husband, a beloved father, a loyal friend, a terrible enemy, a fierce warrior, a great student, an adept politician. She needed another breath. He never broke a single promise, he never abandoned a precious person, he never forgot an enemy, he invented over 100 jutsus and seals, and he changed the world. In his day he was the Demon of the Leaf, the Second Flash, the Lord of Foxes, and the Summoner of the Kyuubi, but there was one other title that he was most proud of. She grinned and looked at all her classmates. He was the greatest of all the Hokages. With that she sat back down and put her little fox back in her lap. The teacher nodded, that did pretty much sum it up. The end.